Hey guys, what's going on? Hope everybody's having a good day out there today, and welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling. Guys, today we're going to give you a sort of a July or summer frog fishing tutorial, a good little seminar on frogs. We talked about frogs on the channel before, but specifically I want to talk about some summer frog fishing in a lot of different scenarios, because frogs are not just limited to matted vegetation. They work in a lot of different situations, and there's a lot of nuances and ins and outs of them. So I'm going to go over all the frogs. I'm going to show you guys how to work them, show you guys, talk about color selections. It could be a good little frog fishing seminar for you guys here. Real quick guys, before we get started, just the daily housekeeping tips to keep the lights on here in the new tackle room. I'd just like to invite everybody to check out our Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns and virtual lessons. If you guys are struggling to catch fish on your favorite lake, this is a great resource to get you started and pointed in the right direction. And if one of the lakes that you fish are not on our website, you can book a virtual lesson with me, and we'll go over any lake in the country with Navionics and Google, get you guys set up and get you some good foundational spots going. So I'll put the Fish the Moment lake map breakdown link in the description of this video. Much appreciated. Okay guys, I know a lot of people that watch the channel, you know, your different levels of your fishing, you know, career or the learning process that we go through. None of us ever stop learning. And if you know much about frogs at all, a lot of people associate frog fishing with throwing them over lily pads and matted vegetation and grass and that type of stuff. And obviously that's probably one of the top things they're designed for. I mean, they're a weedless lure. You know, they come through that type of cover real good, but there's also a lot of different other applications and areas that you can work on. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through all those possible scenarios and sort of just get you guys lined out on that. Now the frog we're gonna talk about today, guys, this is the Megabass Big Gabbit frog here. I'll put the Baitworks link in the description, guys. Baitworks has a big selection of this Big Gabbit frog, and if you use that link, it's a good way to help the channel. But it's basically a walking frog. I mean, there's a lot of walking frogs on the market. If you're not familiar with it, a walking frog is different than like a popping frog because it's designed to go through the water like that, in open water. Now you can just sort of pop it along over the top of matted vegetation, but the real place that a walking frog like the Big Gabbit shines is if you're throwing it around some type of cover or not even cover, and you actually are walking it like a topwater bait trying to generate the strike. We'll get into that a little bit more. So that's your basically two styles. The other style of a frog is like a popping frog like this. It has sort of a concave nose on it. And the popping frog, it will walk a little bit, but it's more designed to be like a chugger. So you got the two different nose designs. My personal favorite is the walking frog like the Big Gabbit, because I think it's a little bit more versatile. I think you can get more out of it with that. So first of all, before we get into the frog colors and all that type of stuff, let's talk about areas and scenarios and type of stuff we need to work it at. Obviously, like I said, matted vegetation is one of the top areas, but another area that a frog works really good in is around any type of cover. I love throwing them underneath boat docks. I love throwing them around the edge of lay down trees, around stumps, any type of cover, rock that you have in the water. It's really, really good in those scenarios. But the thing about it, when you're dealing with frog fishing in more of an open water environment where there's no matted vegetation, shade is the key. You've got to have shade. I mean, if you could, it's not like you can't catch them around shade, but if you've got little shade pockets, your odds of success go up tremendously. Now, when I'm talking about shade, I don't mean talking about like a big giant area or a big area of the bank that's shady. I'm talking about you might be able to be working down a bank and say there's an overhanging tree that's coming over the bank a little bit more, and there may be a shade pocket, you know, maybe this big around. You know, it could be a shade pocket just 3 or 4 feet in diameter. In the summertime of the year, that's where those fish will get on a frog. So a lot of times when I'm talking about the open water frog fishing, I'll be working down through an area and I'm looking specifically for shade. I'm not looking for any type of target to throw it on except that shade. And that shade, excuse me guys, allergies is killing me, man. The shade changes throughout the course of the day. So you may be working down one bank at 9 o'clock in the morning and have a good shade line, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon there's no shade whatsoever. So it's something that's sort of fluid and you have to keep an eye out for it. But in correlation with the shade and the shallow cover, it's all about the perch being up on the bank, because all you guys know right now, if you guys have been fishing in about any man-made impoundment right now, you know, and you can see there's a bunch of perch on the bank. I was down to Table Rock Lake last week, and I don't know how many perch I caught on little crankbaits. I caught pumpkin seeds, I caught black perch, I caught bluegills, and all the perch right now, and in July, August, and early September, are in sort of that 1 to 3 foot of water, and that's why these frogs work so good, guys. The frogs are really, really good for those cruising bass that are up hunting perch right now. And for the most part, those bass like to stay in and around those shade pockets and maybe wait for perch to swim by. It's not like they just like to cruise down open banks and try to catch bluegill. They like to ambush bluegill around a piece of wood or shade pocket or a rock or something like that. So from that standpoint, there's probably more opportunities for frog fishing in the summertime of the year just on open water banks than anywhere out there. So look for those same type of areas that you think the perch are spawning in, and the perch basically spawn in the same type of areas the bass did. So that'll give you an indication of where to start out at. Okay, jeez. Now let's get into colors a little bit, because colors are pretty critical in frog fishing as far as different type of conditions. I've got 4 different color patterns that I like to use in frog fishing based upon the situation. We'll go over each one of them. One is some type of a black frog, one is some type of a perch pattern, one is like a really bright frog, like a white or chartreuse, and the other is some type of a shad or translucent frog. So that's the good thing about the big gabbets. They make a wide, Megabass makes a wide range of frog colors here. So let's talk about right now, is probably one of my favorites, is a black frog. Guys, black frogs work really good in about any condition except when the water is pretty dirty. Ideally, I'm using a frog, a black frog, when I've got a little bit lower light conditions, like it could be early or late in the day, could be cloudy out, rainy, that type of stuff, or if you got some heavy shade pockets, specifically in water visibilities of about 1.5 feet to 3 feet. That's when the black will pretty good. And if you gave me one frog to throw and just say, Randy, you got one frog to throw all the time, it would probably be black. And another reason that black works really good, it's a subtle color. So when you're working this frog along the surface, it's not like a lot of other brighter frogs. It's a little bit more subtle. Works really good like in calm conditions, if it's pretty still out. Another good time a frog will work, a black frog will work really good, is if that water is a little bit cooler in the spring. I know we're talking about summer here, but a black frog is probably one of the best colors for early in the year. I've just caught a ton of fish on a black frog. Now, the black variations, this is a black and blue, but they can be black or whatever, just some type of a black. Now, the next one is the perch pattern. Perch pattern is obviously one of my favorite in the summer because there's so many perch out, and any type of a perch pattern that's got some chartreuses or green or oranges on that is going to do really good. Perch pattern works really good in bright sunny days. It can be shady, it can open water, whatever. But if you got an abundance of an abundance of perch up shallow, and you're noticing a lot of perch in the lakes you're fishing, try the perch pattern. Now, the bright colored frogs, like the white ones or the chartreuses, they've got several different type of, let me see, pull out a white one here. Any type of a white or chartreuse like this is the colors that you want to use in really the dirtier water that you're fishing. So if you're fishing a body of water that has like maybe 1 foot of visibility or 1.5 feet visibility, the bright frog is going to work a lot better for you. And also, if you get one of those days where it's raining, like a steady rain, not cloudy or misty, but like a steady rain, bright frog is going to work pretty good. Another time a bright frog works good is on a really windy day. The brightness and the bright belly on this is designed for minimal visibility and low light conditions. So that's the times that I like to use the bright frog. And the last one which is probably my second favorite frog over the black, is some type of the translucent type of a shaddy type frog. Now this is a pretty new color. The shad type frogs didn't come along till recently, but this is a really good frog in bright bluebird conditions. If you got bright days out, really bright days with not much wind, if you've got clear water, if you got minimal shade pockets where there's not a lot of cover, the shad pattern works pretty good. And I've caught fish on the shad pattern, just fishing it like a walking topwater, just throwing it out over points. And I've caught fish 20 foot off the bank on the shad pattern frogs here. Done really good at Lake Mead and that real clear water at Lake Mead on the frog pattern big gabbit out there. So those are the four main colors that I use with that. Sorry about all the coughing here, guys. Okay, so now we got the colors on there. Let's talk a little bit about how to work them and the equipment you need to set up. Obviously, frogs are one of the few baits that I do fish with braid most of the time. Now, I don't do it all the time. A lot of people automatically equate frog fishing to braided line, and probably 75% of the time I do. I'll use 50-pound test Seaguar Smackdown braid with the frogs. I don't like 65. I feel like it's throwing rope. It's a little bit too heavy. Sometimes I will go to 30. 30-pound test, you know, if it's really open water, 50-pound test if it's a little bit heavier cover. But that being said, if it's really bright and really clear and calm, and I'm fishing specifically shade pockets where the bass are coming out into open water to hit the frog, and I'm not getting around any type of cover or under a dock, I will use you know, I'll go to monofilament or even sometimes fluorocarbon with that. I mean, because I'm sort of aware that the fish could possibly see the braid sitting on that line on the surface. And one of the things you'll notice about it is you can use fluorocarbon line on a frog. It's not like a walking topwater so much. It's a little bit more buoyant, so it won't make them nosedive. So if I'm using a frog with fluorocarbon, I'm usually using 20-pound test Seaguar and Vizex, and I'm fishing it the same way I would in a spook in a little bit more open water. Since I'm not over like super heavy cover, I still get really good hookups, because it's just like fishing any other topwater with fluorocarbon or monofilament. You don't have that heavy cover to penetrate. So I'll use fluorocarbon or mono 25% of the time and braided line 75% of the time. Rod setup with it, guys, you need a pretty stiff rod. Most of the time I'm using, you know, sometimes my favorite is the Megabass Perfect Pitch. It's a 7-foot 2-inch rod, medium heavy. You do need some type of a medium heavy rod for not only the casting distance, but the power. And I think like that 7 to 7.2 foot length is really good, because you still need to have the short. You need the length for the power and the castability, but you need a little bit. You can't have like a 7.5 footer, because it makes it harder to work. So now how I like to work the frog, guys, is I'll throw it out there, let it hit the bottom, and I'll keep the rod tip low. I think you can't really see it on the video here, but you've got to keep that rod tip at the water level, because if you don't, when you work that bait, you know, like a spook, it's going to go more like that than side to side. So one of the big keys in getting a frog to work side to side, it's a little bit more difficult than a walking topwater, is keep that rod tip low to the water and just make little twitches like that. Now you gotta get it twitching right, because one of the harder things about a frog is sometimes, for whatever reason, you can't get it to start walking right off the bat. So you have to get that twitch down just right to get it to start walking. And that's why it's really critical to keep that rod tip right at the water and jerk down with it. Don't jerk to the side, jerk down with it, and it'll get it darting back and forth like that. And if you guys have worked like a Zaraspook or some type of a walking topwater, it's pretty easy to get that bait walking, but a frog is about twice as hard to get walking until you get it walking. Once you get it walking, it's pretty easy, but the difference that people have in there is they think when you're trying to make a frog walk like a spook or something like that, that you have to jerk it the same distance. But if I was fishing a spook like that, that's overworking it. You're going to kill, it will not work on a frog. So instead of going like that, you got to go more like that. Just to like cut your jerks in half. Don't overwork the frog and you'll get them working good. So that's how I usually work it in any open water situation, like if there's pockets in the grass or if I'm fishing shade pockets. But if I'm fishing thick matted vegetation, I'll throw it out there a lot of times. I'll keep my rod tip at about 10 o'clock and I'll just shake it like this back to the boat. I'll shake it and reel it. And I'm not really concerned about the frog walking side to side because it's over mats. I'm more concerned about getting that bait coming through the vegetation and being in position to set the hook. When I get that strike, I can reach down and set the hook. That's another thing about frog fishing, guys, is you will lose a lot of fish on the frog on the hook set because most people are sort of like a live wire ending. It's like when they see a fish blow up on a frog, they immediately instinctively set the hook. One of the things that you have to do that will help you in frog fishing is you have to anticipate that strike. So let's say, for example, I throw my bait out there and I'm working it like that and I'm expecting that fish to hit that frog at any time. When that fish hits that frog, I want to bow into that fish and I don't want to set the hook until I cannot see the frog. Don't get in a big hurry. It's like even if you're in matted vegetation, reel down, pay attention to your line as far as if you can see your line moving. Watch that frog to see if you can see it or not. And when you feel that line moving and you see that frog disappear, that's when you set the hook on it. Don't ever set the hook on a frog at the blow up. And I know sometimes it's hard to do. I mean, a lot of people, just get all excited and they haven't had a bite for a while and then they do that. So anyway, guys, that's just a pretty good little short frog tutorial. Best time to throw frogs work anytime the water temperature is over 55 degrees. So they'll work anywhere between like March to December. But to me, the best time to fish a frog is right now, July, August, early September, shallow water, matted vegetation. That's when frogs really shine. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.